You likely feel like you are in the driver's seat of your own life, making logical choices based on clear thinking. However, your mind is constantly influenced by invisible psychological strings that steer your behavior without your conscious input. One of the primary flaws in our programming is the Dunning-Kruger effect. This cognitive bias means that people with the least amount of skill or knowledge in a subject are often the most confident in their abilities. Their lack of competence physically prevents them from recognizing their own ignorance, leading them to believe they are far more capable than they actually are. We also judge others by a completely different standard than we use for ourselves. If someone else makes a mistake, we blame their character. If we make the same mistake, we blame the situation. This is the fundamental attribution error, an unconscious habit of excusing our own behavior while assuming others do bad things simply because they are bad people. This bias extends to how we perceive media. The third-person effect describes our tendency to see how advertisements or persuasive messages affect our peers, while remaining blind to how they affect us. We often deny this influence entirely, leaving our own subconscious unguarded. Because we believe we are immune, we rarely notice how heavily our daily moods, desires, and attitudes are actually being steered by the mass media we consume. These systematic flaws prove that the conscious mind is often an unreliable narrator of our own reality. If our self-awareness is this easily compromised, we have to look toward deeper forces to understand why we behave the way we do. Beyond cognitive biases, our physical neurochemistry acts as a silent director. The dopamine-seeking reward loop, which traditionally rewards us for survival needs like eating, has a secondary function. It makes us crave new information. This flowchart explains why a quick social media check turns into hours of doom scrolling. Each new piece of information triggers a dopamine release, which compels you to keep searching. Because the brain seeks but never feels satisfied, the loop continues until interrupted. Our biology also dictates how we handle social survival. When we experience interpersonal rejection, the response functions as a biological survival mechanism that triggers an intense, painful reaction. Brain imaging reveals that social rejection activates the exact same centers as literal physical trauma. To your nervous system, the emotional pain of being excluded is neurologically identical to the sensation of physical injury. These biological realities are difficult to overcome with simple willpower. Our brains are hardwired to prioritize these chemical rewards and social survival cues over conscious logic. This internal wiring even dictates how we construct our own history. Most people have a reminiscence bump, a preference for recalling experiences from their late teens and early 20s over almost any other period of life. Looking at this graph of memory retention, we see a disproportionate cluster of data points between ages 15 and 25. The emotional intensity of choices made during this period wires these memories deeply, becoming the primary source for our lifelong attitudes and beliefs. These internal traits eventually project into our physical environment. Research has found a statistical correlation between people with hostile personalities and the ownership of dog breeds traditionally viewed as aggressive. This choice often stems from environmental stressors. Individuals facing social isolation or living in high crime areas experience chronic stress, which can manifest as increased aggression and an unconscious preference for a protective guard dog. Our choices in companions and the weight we give to specific memories illustrate how our current identity is often anchored in these unexamined psychological patterns. While these glitches are built in, we can exploit how the brain functions to gain an advantage. Solomon's paradox shows that we naturally think more rationally about other people's problems than our own. You can bypass your own emotional bias by using a self-distancing strategy. The next time you face a personal dilemma, take a step back and analyze the situation as if you were an outsider looking in. You can also suppress emotional bias through language. This diagram shows how speaking a non-native tongue activates the brain's inhibition center, dimming our innate emotional intuitions. When using a foreign language, systematic thought blocks irrational impulses, allowing for rational decision-making. We can even reevaluate traits we previously thought were negative. Daydreaming, often dismissed as a lack of focus, is actually a strong indicator of high intelligence and creativity. Highly efficient brains require less capacity to perform simple tasks. This allows the mind to wander and foster new ideas without losing track of the task at hand. Finally, we can use the brain's reward system to our benefit. Regularly helping others improves the community while simultaneously triggering a biological reward in the volunteer that reduces stress and can even increase lifespan. We may be susceptible to countless internal illusions, but understanding these mechanics provides the perspective necessary to recognize our own biases. By learning how our minds function, we can navigate these hidden currents and act with greater intention.